everybody, sorry I'm a little bit late. Lots of stuff going on. So my friend Lauren has been visiting all weekend and her poor car has decided not to start. So we've been out trying to get her car to jump, and we're debating whether or not to go get a battery. And then the duckies are sort of exploring the outside, and so I have them downstairs, so you may hear them go peepity peep peep. And it's been raining. It's been raining. It has rained here so much. There has been so much rain. So much rain. So much rain. And like, I tried to knock back my weeds before the rain came, and I can see I kind of failed out in the garden. I also didn't manage to get my okra or my peanuts planted because, again, so much rain. I mean, it's just slop. It's just muck. There's so much rain in my garden, man. The duckies are loving it because when I put them outside this morning, they were running all over. It's wet and there's worms and they're so excited. Crazy little ducks. That's all I gotta say. But we're gonna talk about color work today now that I've chit-chatted about other things. Just some cleanup things. Hey, slow crawl started. Yay! Make sure you have your passport and you're shopping those shops so you can get your stickers and your codes. And free shipping at Black Sheep Fiber Emporium all the way through May 31st. And if you're crafting, we're still doing Black Sheep Craft Time. And Tina and I are going to talk about maybe running another craft along for the summer. So we'll pick out some, you know, knitting and tatting and crochet and maybe an embroidery piece. And then if you want to, you can join in with those items, or you can just join in with your own. I made like 8 pillowcases this weekend, and I got a little bit more done on my embroidery sampler, which I am loving. I got my fuzzy turkey work done on my bees, so that's fun. Anyway, I didn't get a lot else done because, hey Brooke, you know, we were just cruising around with Ina. She has been super happy. I got her little sunglasses and we cooked out and we did all kinds of fun stuff. So anyway, I really like Piecework, and we used to carry it more at the shop, but it seems like a lot of people just kind of get a subscription to it. But I really like Piecework, and again, if you're wondering why it's backwards, it's because I'm using my front-facing camera so I can make sure that it's in, you know, in the shot. This last Piecework that came out had a really interesting article in it if you're a knitter. They have other really good stuff too. I mean, I'm kind of multi-craftual. Hey Brenda! So is Brenda. Brenda does a lot of stuff, man. And I like to knit and tat and spin and weave and crochet and I like Mediterranean knotted lace and I like embroidery, and so I just like lots of different things, right? So I like to get Piecework because they have lots of different things in there, and I like history, so it all works out because it's like needlecraft and history together. But they have this really great article in here, and it's called Methods of Multicolor Knitting, Fading Traditions, ? And I found it really interesting to read because she talks about 4 types of multicolor knitting, and one of them is the parallel floats technique. And my author, who was my author? I forgot to read that. Oh, I think it's Ola Peter Mellon, but I could have said that wrong, and I do apologize if she watches this and I butchered her name. Sorry. Oh, his name. His name. Oh man, I really butchered it. So sorry. So sorry, Mr. Oli Peter Mellon. Anyway, it's a great article. I love this article. It's parallel floats, rotated floats, twined binding, and woven binding. So really interesting ideas, right? So with the parallel floats technique, it's a stranded method, and you hold both yarns parallel in a consistent relationship to each other as they change places when the pattern calls for a new color. That's the one where you can get yarn dominance. So I know that we've talked about that a lot, but that's where you can have your yarn dominance. So that's this one up in the corner. And you can see the parallel floats right here. And then the other one that he talks about is a rotated floats technique, which is similar to the parallel floats, but there's no risk of yarn dominance because the yarns are rotated in the same direction at each color change. So if you think about it, they usually tell you not to twist the strands when you're knitting for color work. And that would be your regular stranded knitting. When you are twisting the strands, that's your rotated float. So that would be where you're twisting your strands, and you would constantly be working the next color under. So if you are switching from white to blue, you would switch the white under and then work your, white. And then you'd switch your blue under and you'd work your blue. And then you'd switch your white under and you'd work your white. So that is this one. So you can see the two different ones. So that was the parallel floats, and this one was that rotated floats. So really interesting idea there. And then the bottom two talk about twined binding and woven binding. So when you're doing a binding technique with Colorwork, you are making sure that you are twisting your colors on every stitch. And the reason that you're twisting your colors on every stitch is so that your floats are always caught and you can't see like a little dab of blue in your white that's being carried across the back. So with twine binding, that's the one where you would rotate forward over the old yarn, and you would always bring it forward, right? And it says that you would be using Z-plied yarn. So we haven't really talked about twist, but when you twist, there's clockwise and counterclockwise, which are S and Z twist, and it has to do with how the strands, are twisted together to be plied. We should do a spinning one. I could do a spinning one. I've talked to Tina, and she is going to see you all on Friday. So I am going to be back next Monday. And then what Tina and I are going to try to do is we're going to kind of rotate out Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so that I'm doing maybe 2 videos a week and she does 1, which will be a lot of fun, I think. Anyway, so maybe next week we'll talk about spinning, and we'll talk about the difference between just using a single versus using a 2-ply or a 3-ply, and chain plying, and we can talk about S versus Z, but that's getting off topic because we need to be back over here with our twined versus woven binding. The woven binding I find really, really interesting, and so it says this method entails knitting every second stitch under and every other stitch over the trailing yarn, thus weaving in the trailing yarn with the knit stitches. So if you think about it, it'd be every second stitch is going to have every second stitch under and every other stitch over the trailing yarn. So whatever the trailing yarn would happen to be, whether that's your white or your blue, you would be in, hang on, and this one is where you just rotate your yarns around each other. So every time you would have to pick out this knitting, you would have to unwind your yarns, which I think could be irritating, but if you don't make a mistake, it doesn't matter. And then this one is the one where every other stitch you are going to be doing, let's see, knitting every second stitch under and every other stitch over the trailing yarn, thus weaving in the trailing yarn with the knit stitches. It says that this creates a robust and resilient material with its own elasticity, which I find really interesting. But until I read this article, I hadn't considered that there were 4 different ways to do color work. And having read it, I mean, it kind of makes me want to break out the needles and start trying out a little color work and doing some little swatches, kind of like, are in the article, and comparing the swatches that you get based on the parallel floats, the rotated floats, the twined binding, and the woven binding. Because I think, there's definitely different applications for each of those, right? Most of the time, I'm sure parallel floats and rotated floats are perfectly fine. I've used that a lot for various color work that I've done, but I'm just thinking that, that twined and woven binding could have some really good applications. So anyway, if you haven't picked up this copy of Piecework, I can definitely recommend it. I really like it. There's quite a bit of knitting in it. There's actually knitting on the front cover this time. It talks about knitting vintage lace. And then it had the color work, and I'm trying to think what else was in here. Well, there was the buttonhole thing that I thought Tina would really enjoy, so I told her about it, and then she bought it. But yeah, this was a really, really, really good article of Piecework, or really good magazine this time. There's that fluted lace shawl. Nice stuff. So I can definitely recommend that one. Now I am going to have to run poor Lauren to, oh great, to go get a new battery. So I'm going to let you guys go and make sure that I get her taken care of so she can get back on the road, because she needs to go home. Unfortunately, she has to go back to work tomorrow. Now, I tried to tell her that really it just meant that she should be living here from now on, because I do miss my Lauren. I miss her a lot. And Ina has loved having her here. They had lots of fun. I think one day poor Lauren had to read her like 12 books, because Ina loves her books and just kept bringing her book. So it was really cute. Anyway, I'm gonna go make sure that she can get on the road and get home, but we'll be talking. Tina is going to be your video guide on Friday about noon. She's gonna try to do about noon Pacific time, which is about 2 o'clock my time. So we're gonna try to stay on kind of the same schedule. And then I will be back on Monday, and maybe Monday we'll have a nice little discussion about spinning, and then we'll figure out something else to do, because it's always fun, right? I'll try to think of things. Now, if you guys have something that you want me to do, make sure that you are sending me a message, or put a comment on Facebook, or you can send us a Facebook message through the page and make a suggestion. I'm happy to talk about things that you're interested in. I'm happy to show you techniques. We can do more color work techniques in the future. I can kind of do a little series where we look at each of those in depth, and maybe I can knit some and we can try it out. Does that sound fun? I think that could be fun. So maybe we'll talk about spinning to kind of get us started, and then we'll do a little series, and I'll do each of the different color work pieces. So the parallel floats, the rotated floats, the twined binding, and the woven binding, 4 different days, and we'll look at each of those in depth and try it out. Does that sound like fun? I think it sounds like fun. Clearly, because I'm interested in it, so I hope somebody else is too. Anyway, don't forget that we've got free shipping on until May 31st. We're still doing the fun hashtag Black Sheep Craft Time. We're going to plan something fun for the summer. Slow Yarn Crawl is happening, and you can participate no matter where you are. So don't forget that you can grab your passport, and you just have to make purchases from our 35 shops, because if you're going to crawl virtually, then the way that you get your stamp and prove that you've been there virtually is by making sure that you make a purchase. And that also helps to make sure that our 35 shops stay in business, because we really want that to happen. Anyhow, I will see you guys next time. I'm gonna go help out poor Lauren. So stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Tina will be here Friday, and I will be back on Monday.